Okay, so let's, well,
That's perfect.
are we still good? Maybe it's, there we go. All right, so let's do this first, and let's call this meeting to order. For the record, that the meeting is being recorded and it is being televised via Zoom. The current attendees are myself, Richard Green from the town of Hamden, Mary McNally from the town of East Long Meadow, Pam Ledoux and Ron Kincaid from the town of Wales, Michelle Barrett, our current Veteran Service Officer, and Deborah House, Administrative Assistant in East Long Meadow. The purpose of the meeting, as per the agenda sent out, is to discuss operations of the district and the way in which we are going to start to assimilate both Ron Kincaid and Pamela Ledoux into the operational system of the district. The next thing is all the meetings have been recorded prior, and those recordings, those minutes or those meetings are available at the Town of Hamden website, and they can be viewed, and we will have minutes to vote on at our next meeting. Now, that said, why don't we do this? We'll try and do a little bit of an organizational thing here. I know Mary said she has some questions, and that's fine. And then Pam and Ron have some things they're going to need and may have some questions. So why don't we take this all one at a time? It would seem to be we start with Pam and Ron just to kind of get the questions they need, and then we'll go individually from there. Does that make sense to everybody?
Have we received our letter acknowledging that we have a waiver of compliance through the balance of fiscal 22? I know Mike indicated that he had some affirmation of that, but not in writing.
I have not received that letter. I will check just in case it went to the Munson Town Hall. I'll do that today, and then we can also check with Mike. But as of this moment, I don't have that letter.
Okay, so that's
Mike hasn't, he hasn't relayed that to me either, so.
So that's a concern I have, because before you and Wales get into the weeds on all this, we need to know that the state's going to allow us to make these transfers, and still Michelle's sitting on ice over there. So to me, that's an initial question that has to be answered, but I'm happy to listen to. I mean, Mike also referenced at the last meeting that he was going to reach out to your town's legal services to get a laundry list of the procedural issues as well as substantive ones that we needed to address in order to move forward. And he obviously spoke very highly of your ability, Pam, to get all that put together for us. So hopefully, I just don't want to take your time to do it if we're somehow still going to get a big stop sign from Boston.
Agreed. And we haven't heard anything. I will check just in case the letter ended up in Munson, but I haven't heard anything directly either, via email or any other way, and communicated in many times with our district representative in Boston, but haven't heard a word back. So that's another thing to be followed up on. Mary, why don't we stay with you then, and then we'll go to Pam and Ron. Any other issues or any other thing else you want to add to this list for us to track down?
Well, Pam and or Ron just mentioned that they weren't able to ascertain who the authorized signatories were on the account.
Right, I got that written down.
But we have a separate account at Munson Savings, do we not? That transferred the so-called surplus and.
No, that's the problem. That Rod does not have access to any funds whatsoever.
Okay.
As of this moment.
We have Munson Savings created account, but has a zero balance right now.
Okay,
so
Rod.
Who's got the key to that answer, Rick? Right. You know?
Actually, I don't know, so I'm going to have to find out. I'll track that down. I have never been involved with signing. I don't know of any board member that's ever actually been involved with signing of the checks and that type of thing. So obviously, we're going to have to get that answered today.
So my first question.
Was it Madeline or was it a T?
It was Madeline and Lisa.
Her assistant?
Yeah.
So it was Madeline and Lisa who signed the last group of checks that we see in the checking account.
And those persons are employed at Munson?
Correct.
So,
Madeline has indicated that she is no
No
longer
longer.
the signer
That's correct.
on the account, so can't assist Rod in the transition or transfer actually of the funds from MMDT to Munson Savings.
and so the custodian, what are the initials using? What?
MMDT,
MMDT, can't the
that's where
custodian,
your accounts were.
right? So can't they tell us? Are they unwilling to tell us who can sign?
Well, we have a signature sheet that has Madeline and Lisa both on it. But when I reached out to Madeline, she said she was no longer the treasurer and could not transfer the money. So this comes back to the board
Right,
to tell me what to do. I
right.
mean,
Okay.
I can call them, but if they tell me it's Madeline and Lisa, we're exactly where we are right now.
Seems to me that part of Munson's withdrawal from the district would have required them to cooperate in the transfer of funds. I mean, they withdrew, but if their employees were the signatures, then they should at least effectuate a withdrawal or authorize a transfer. I mean, that seems like it shouldn't be too difficult. So
let me add right here, because I had conversation with Madeline about probably in the last 7 to 10 days about not transitioning the account, but adding the signators at that time, as she was the one, and she said she'd give me a hand. But then, and this could be my misread, I talked to Donna Vicalvi from Munson Savings about setting up the account. And then the sense I'd gotten from Donna was that they would be able to assist us in the transfer. Now, obviously, it requires some sort of sign off on our end. Munson can't just go get the money. They need something from us to authorize them to sign off. So I'll reach out to both Madeline and Donna Vicalvi today and see what exactly they think we need to do to get this done. But Madeline was the last signer, and my last email exchange with her was that she was going to help us get the new signers on the account.
And Rick,
Well,
let us be clear, Rick, that Madeline was the treasurer. She was the signer. Rod is now has agreed to be the treasurer of the district.
Thank you, Rod.
And, you know, as far as best practices, none of you folks, the members of the board, should really have anything to do with that. piece of it.
Agreed.
It should be
Agreed.
left to the treasurers. So it has to be figured out. And hopefully there is cooperation and from Munson. You know, and if not, I recommend you send them a letter saying that they didn't in fact withdraw from the district pursuant to the law. So guess what? You're still in till June 30th, but that's for another day. Anyway.
well, I think we should do that right away. And
I agree.
I had lunch last week with Donna Vicalvi, and she mentioned that obviously she's willing to help, but I don't know what she could possibly do at this point. If Munson is going to be the new custodian, but they don't have our money and they can't get it, they can't order or authorize MMDT to transfer the money to their institution. So it's got to be the Munson connection. And I think we should.
Let me just tell you that I will talk to Madeline today and tell her what we need, because as I said, I had email exchange with her in the last 7 to 10 days. And she said, let me know what, she was actually going to help get the signators on the account. And so let me get that gap filled in, because they have not shown any unwillingness to cooperate here.
No,
Well-
I'm sorry, that's not true. I have an email where she told me she would not transfer the money, that she was no longer the treasurer of this district. So that's very unhelpful in my opinion. Maybe the board needs to send her a letter directing her to transfer the funds from MMDT to Munson Savings Bank.
And the signers are already all set for Munson Savings. Rod is on
Right.
it as well as his assistant.
Right, and that was my sense when I talked to Donna, that you folks would, it would be easier, better, set up a new account with a local bank that we all use and have you guys immediately added as the signers to the account. So the last link in the chain is getting the money that's in the current MMDT account switched over.
Right.
And so Rod, you had a communication with Madeline that's clearly different from the one I had. So we'll have to send a letter.
Great.
You know, not to be a nudge, Rick, but that has to go out today. And
No
I'll
worries.
write it if you want, because again, we've got Michelle, who's now going on like week 8
Right.
with no pay.
Exactly.
And that is just absolutely unacceptable.
And
Yeah,
we don't
Mary,
know what
if
other
you-
liabilities the district has, really, to be honest. We
Yeah.
haven't, we have no outstanding bills in any of those files. We don't know if there are any elsewhere. We have no idea.
We'll get you a copy of the budget and we'll, so you'll see that for the numbers as an expectation of what bills come in. And then we'll, I haven't seen, Mary, no new mail's shown up in East Long Meadow yet, correct?
Well, I don't open the mail, Deb. We haven't seen anything, right? No.
Okay,
So,
So I want to say,
I don't understand this.
I want to say on a positive note, Michelle did come in last week and she has signed all of the required employee paperwork for the state and the federal government for taxation and her Social Security
Right.
equivalent depository for her retirement. So we've got that paperwork, but right now I can't do anything until we have access to the fund.
okay, that's obviously the first and biggest thing that's gonna have to be tackled today.
And we also need for her appointment letter to be amended, if you don't mind, to include an effective date of
Yes,
appointment. In
Yep,
addition to her salary, because we don't have access to any minutes in writing where you folks voted her salary. So we're gonna need that too, so we know what to pay her.
hold on one second. All right, and the salary, you're not saying the salary, you want that in the appointment letter, you just want the
Yes.
appointment date. Is there anything
No,
else
the
that was
salary
missing?
should also- The salary, Rick, should be in the appointment letter.
Okay. The tricky part is when I wrote the letter, I wrote it from the base information that we had to write the letter, and then Boston never responded saying they needed any additional information. So what we do need to include is in the letter of appointment is the salary and the starting date. And anything else we need to update that letter?
No, I mean, it's
The
as
original
basic
letter
as
was
it is.
sent out like a month ago, and we never even heard anything back on it.
I mean,
Okay.
she doesn't have an employment contract, so we're not aware, is she due any other benefits, any type of benefits? We know she's not taking health insurance or anything like that, but is
Right.
there a travel stipend? It looks like Mr. Comerford was getting something like that. We need to know that for payroll purposes, to know how to pay her, what to pay
Yep.
her.
You'll see it in the budget. So, and you'll get a copy of that today.
Well, Pam, that was also something that Mike suggested KP could weigh in on, because I would like Michelle to have a job description that's updated from the one we were using, as well as an employment contract. Because the contract and the IMA that preceded all this, I think leaves a few questions that go to other line items in the budget that I asked about at last month's meeting, or the last meeting we had, namely the ongoing medical insurance for the retired former VSOs who were providing service to multiple other communities that are no longer in the district, and somehow this district continues to pay those bills. I just, the nexus there as to the obligation, I don't know where that is.
Right.
I don't know where that comes from. So for my nickel, I feel like I want to drive to Munson and just go see that woman and ask her to just sign off. I mean, I
I'm
thought
going there.
you
Barry, I'm
gave,
going there today. I'm going there right after this meeting's over. I'm driving out there.
but I thought she gave you a box of all the stuff and all
Yes.
the money and everything.
All that's with Pam and Rod now.
Yes.
All
We have
she
two
gave me is
boxes.
already out in Wales.
Yeah, we have 2 boxes.
So you have everything except the Benjamins.
Yep,
Yeah,
they have the
well, you know,
checkbook. They got everything but the cash. They got the checkbooks. They got everything but the base.
All right.
Now Mary, you bring up a bunch of good points, and it's not probably to be determined now, but again, I asked Rick if he could find a current IMA. Those IMAs should be on annual. They should be an annual basis, because the numbers change. That has to be addressed about the health insurance and allocating those out to former members of the district. That all has to be done, and it should be done. So that IMA definitely needs to be revamped. I think the last one I saw was from, Rick, was it the 80s or the 90s, the IMA? It's no longer valid.
I think there's one from when East Long Meadow joined the district, Pam, but you're
Yeah,
absolutely, it has not been updated since then.
Right,
And-
it's an annual IMA because the assessment numbers change specifically, and other things might change too.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Okay. With regard, let me just, and let's not forget anything, but I just want to let you, I did have, Michelle and I talked, what was it, Thursday or Friday, Michelle? And I sent Michelle over another copy, or a copy of the job description that was generated by the board, mostly through the efforts of Evan Brassard when he was still with Munson, and asked that Michelle start to look at that because she's clearly doing things based on our conversation that weren't in it. And I felt that if she took that document and started to change it, that would be the basis of getting her a contract, an actual contract. And Michelle was going to work on that. I mean, obviously, we didn't pin it down to a date, but it's agreed that there should be a contract. And as of now, there's not, but we have a good basis for one. I think Michelle's doing something, but that's, that was the conversation I had with her.
Yeah, can I chime in, please?
Sure.
There are a few things missing from the description, and I'm gonna work on that today. And I can get that out by the end of the day and make sure that, because there's a lot of stuff that I do, including, I went to a funeral on Friday for a deceased veteran that we've been working very hard to get laid to rest because he was in a funeral home since July. And there's many other things that I'm going to be doing, and I would like to include all that. So I'll make sure that gets in by the end of the day.
That'd be great. And then we can all take that, the original one with Michelle's changes, and I would like to think we could make an employment contract out of that. And obviously, it's going to need some legal review. You're way outside of my job description. I can't think for the rest of you, but it should be reviewed and formalized and signed off on.
Well, I think we're just ahead of ourselves until we get the money. I don't want Wales to expend their town resources on their legal services. I mean, that would be my opinion.
Agreed.
We're renovating an office over in the Council on Aging for Michelle, to kind of get her out of that little closet that you see her sitting in, which is unacceptable also. But, there's a lot of effort, and Mike made this point at the last meeting too, Rick. I'm sure you'll remember that unless we can figure out how we're going to manage this district appropriately going forward, with administrative help and obviously with Ron's expertise as treasurer and knowing where things are and who's responsible for what, I just feel like we're still a bit adrift. And
I agree with you. I agree. This has been autopilot. Nope, you're right. This has been an autopilot for 75 plus years. And now with the help of Rod and Pam, we can hopefully, Pam giving some administrative effort and Rod taking over the books. You're right, Mary. Let's get this thing off drift and get it, centered up. And, clearly some of the conversation, and this is the stuff whether, I, as a guy who's been on this board for a long time, want to hear it or not, or feel good about it or not, is immaterial. Comments that Pam makes about having an annually updated IMA is clearly needs to be done. And, I can see the frustration for Rod and Pam just watching them over the camera, trying to get this thing pounded into shape and wondering, what have these guys been doing except, just having the thing go. Michelle's clearly already doing more work than the past 3 VSOs did. And it's time to acknowledge that. So I agree with you, Mary. And obviously we got 2 big things we got to do. We got to get the money in, the recognition from the state, and then we got the rest, we got to shuffle to get the rest of this into place.
Well, I agree. And I just think that we need to do first things first, because.
Agreed. The money and the recognition right now are the 2 big things, because everything else is meaningless without it.
And costly to proceed.
Yeah, gotcha.
But Pam, to your point, I do have a 2012 IMA in my office. I think
That's the one.
the most recent one.
Is that the most recent?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
The 2012 would be the last one, and that was done when East Long Meadow joined the district, and one has not been completed since then. Of that, I'm certain.
And that's why I'm worried about getting the written affirmation from the Veterans Office in Boston, because now that we've poked the bear a little bit, they can look into the history here and maybe they'll just say, hey, your district's not going to be authorized because, you know, for whatever reason, they don't appreciate what has been happening. I don't know. I don't know that. I hope it's not the case, but I don't want to impose on other communities resources to get this done and let's move and let's do this and that and the other thing if we don't have our very first threshold item addressed, and that's the money.
Well, we
Agreed.
can't go backwards, so let's look forward. These are the critical items that we need to start moving forward, and then we'll get, you know, all the documentation in order. I really don't foresee an issue with obtaining that waiver. I believe that it has been acknowledged, it has been approved. We just need to get it in writing. And then again, several other things that we need to get in writing and get that money moved over. So, and like I said, you know, I don't know how forceful the board wishes to be, but you know, Rick, you said that you've had no problems with Munson. Rod has experienced some. So
Fair enough.
again, they did not withdraw from this district per the law. And
Agreed.
Rick, as you and I had this conversation the first time we met, when Wales tried to do it and we did it wrong, you sent us a nasty gram, rightfully so. And we stayed in the district for the year, until the end of the year, until they decided to do it correctly. And then Michael decided correctly again to come back in.
Right.
In my opinion. So if that's the case, then I'm sorry, Munson, you're in this till June 2022. So we need to figure this out. You didn't withdraw correctly.
They didn't. And, you know, the last answer I got was they sent the letter to the state, and apparently the state accepted that. But you're right. The law is specific in how it works, and that's why Wales got the letter. No disagreement.
Correct.
Well, I
Okay.
had a question. Troy was just here the other day. He's from Palmer, the VSO there. He told me that he took over Munson as a VSO.
He did. And that was all done. That was all done in essence outside of our district. And that goes to the point that Pam made, that Munson sent the letter of withdrawal and all their reformation paperwork joining Palmer to the state. They did not send it to the district. And, you know, I will tell you, one of the things I find frustrating, and obviously this board is not without, we don't live in a glass house here, but the state in their infinite wisdom comes down and says, well, we don't think we want to recognize your district, do this, this, and this. Yet the state has failed on every level with regard since this started. East Long Meadow gave us a waiver when East Long Meadow joined, and then they write a letter that says they're not going to allow because East Long Meadow has to have their own VSO. Then it shouldn't have been allowed to begin with. And then when Holland left the district, nothing. Now Munson leaves, we don't get notified in the appropriate way, but they just allow Troy and Palmer and Munson to merge together, and there's without even regard to what the law says. So it's literally like whether it's this board or the state, everybody's flying by the seat of their pants, and there is no consistent following of the rules. So at this stage, we get our own house in order, and then, you know, we go from there. So I know what Troy and Palmer and Munson, I've heard the whole thing, but they didn't do it right. But again, the state just said, oh, whatever. So I find it always interesting how the state decides where to direct its thoughtfulness.
Well, now that I've stirred the pot and made my first impression, hopefully not a miserable one, I have to go to another meeting and I have to drive to get there. So I had sent you an email, Rick, saying I had to leave this meeting at 40-minute mark. So hopefully you don't need to vote on anything, because I guess you're losing a quorum when I exit.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. If we need to, we'll call another meeting in short order. It's not that hard to get us all together, Mary. So no worries. We're good.
Well, would really appreciate to know what happens with Munson today.
I'll let you know. I'll call you.
Okay.
And then if it's not a positive response, then the board will send a letter. Is that where we are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Or maybe if you go out there today, you ought to bring the letter with you.
If I can get one drafted quick enough. I was actually literally going to go there as soon as I leave here.
Well, Debbie's going to stay on the meeting, just to take a few notes, I guess, Deb, right?
Yes.
Okay, so sayonara. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my rants.
Mary.
No worries,
Okay.
Mary, thank you.
Take care.
All right, so let's go back to Rod and Pam. Now, have you, just kind of the list, have you brought up the other, all of, not in essence, all of the concerns you currently have? Or is there more from what we've discussed so far?
Those two were the most
That's it.
important.
Right.
So the IMA, obviously,
So we can't do anything.
so yeah, the checkbook and the IMA.
And Michelle's appointment letter,
Oh, Michelle's appointment letter, I'm sorry.
Updated
Hold on, let me
appointment
put an
letter, very
asterisk next to that.
because that's the first thing on our list. We, once, the money comes over, we're putting, I'll let Rod explain how he's handling, Michelle's payroll and also purchasing some software to take care of the books.
Yeah, so we need to buy some software. I'm thinking QuickBooks to actually do the books. And then I want to use Harper's payroll for payroll and tracking and all of that going forward. I'm not going to do this by hand like it looks like the previous people had done. This is going to be, software and automation all the way. So
Agreed.
once I get the budget, once I get, the funds, get Harper's on board, then we can get Michelle paid and we can make sure that all the quarterly payroll taxes are paid on time.
Okay, I've got that. I'm just making
So
some
Michelle
other
is
notes.
gonna be paid on the same schedule as our employees. The bi-weekly schedule should be paid at the same time.
Right.
And then the QuickBooks software, Rod is going to use for, the accounting and the cutting of checks on the accounts payable side.
Okay. Let me go, something just occurred to me. And thankfully Deb stayed online here. Now, clearly, obviously, we have to get the money that's in the, whatever it is, the MMMDT account shifted over. But also, we have the expenditure, the money coming in from each municipality for this year. And at one of our prior meetings, the budget was attached to the email for each town to turn into their treasurers. And one of those was, Mike had one. Did Rod and Pam, did you guys get a bill for your share?
I think we did pay our share back in June.
We
right?
did.
But
You
all I
couldn't
have
have, because a bill wasn't presented. You may have allocated the money, but you hadn't had a bill presented to you yet.
Oh, no,
Oh.
you know what? We haven't.
Okay,
Because there was an increase and I told Michael we were fine because we had appropriated sufficient funds to pay it.
And I'm thinking that East Long Meadow hasn't either. Let's do this today. Let me do one more thing. I'm going to try and get to all this today. I will send out, Rod and Pam, you'd asked for a copy of the budget. I will send out the email that had the original budget as well as the allocation to each town. Why don't we do this? And so this would be a note for Deb, and I'll give this one to our treasurer. Well, we should have the deposits go into the new Munson account. We can start paying bills.
correct.
And
So if we had checks coming in, I could set up, the Monson account is set up, so any new money could go deposited, absolutely.
So do you want me to, if I get that and I see the assessments for each of the 3 communities, I can generate invoices on behalf of the district and send them off to each town.
Let's do that. Pam, that's an even better idea because it's more formal and it comes from one place and it can be used. Why don't we do this? We'd originally, let me back up yet another step. It's like Ron White. I have to tell you this to tell you that. What if we used Wales as the district mailing address, since that's where all the bills and that type of thing are going to be paid from, as opposed to East Long Meadow, because then they got to get from East Long Meadow to Wales.
Okay, we can do that.
All right, so tell me this, what's the address that I should be using?
PO Box 834.
All right, I can make that change. And in the meantime, so Pam, if you generate, I'll send you that email, get it out to you today. If I fail in any way, you'll have it first thing in the morning, but I've got a few things I've got to get done today. I will get it to you. You will see the actual budget, the town by town breakdown, and from that, you can generate an invoice for the district using your address and asking for the money to be sent to you. That money can then be deposited in the Munson account so we can at least pay Michelle and pay our bills.
Okay. The other
Does
thing
that-
I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a look at the IMA and see if I can update that document too, because again, in it lays out the assessments and all of that. So let me see
Yeah.
what I can do with updating that IMA. But first of all, I will generate the invoices to Hamden, East Long Meadow, and Wales so we can get those paid.
So then we'll have that money in the account. I'll go to Munson as soon as I leave here. We'll work on getting that money into the account. If they give me a hard time in any way, we'll draft a letter. We'll go from there. I think that, okay, does that make sense to everybody so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay, good.
I have, one other thing to bring up is that I know Brimfield is having a problem with their veterans agent right now. So just for future growth, that may be an area where we really look at to get Brimfield brought in. I know they've had a problem for the past 6 months. And it's been a huge issue over there as well right now.
So let
Rick,
me,
I think Michael said that you and he were going to approach Holland and Brimfield. Is that correct?
that's correct. I mean, just so for the benefit of for who's left here, and I won't make this forever. The original district was formed in 1946, and the original district consisted of Hamden, Munson, Brimfield, Holland, and Wales. And then they had a significant issue with the VSO back in 2006, 2009 timeframe. And that VSO ultimately, he saw the writing on the wall and he got out. But in the middle of all that, Brimfield pulled out of the district. Again, the state, as far as I know, to this day, it was never done the way it was supposed to. But oddly enough, that was a time when I was coming back onto this board as that was happening. So that's when Brimfield pulled out, and they actually sought out their own person. And I think that's the person who resigned 6 months ago. And then and don't hold me to the timeframes anymore, please. Probably 4 or 5 years ago is when Holland pulled out. Again, similar thing, just, and then, so it's been through what it's been through. It would be somewhat interesting to me if in the end we ended up with Holland and Brimfield back in the district. So it would be good too. I believe it would be good for them. So I absolutely agree. Yeah, Mike and I have talked about that. We talked about that a week ago Friday about approaching those two communities in the very near future, and sooner rather than later may work.
I agree.
But keeping in mind, and I say this for everybody, and especially with Deb taking notes, keeping in mind the district, if those two communities come back in, I say this for everyone, and again, for Deb taking notes, it's going to cause us to really accelerate as best we can our efforts toward making sure Michelle does get to full-time status and potentially has some sort of an assistance type person, because there are state mandates and requirements in that. That said, in my opinion, because it's a regional issue, this is something that can be accomplished, and still it's significantly less money than each of the member communities would spend on their own to accomplish the same thing. So we're on the right track. Pam, I appreciate the effort you and Rod have in it. Since this whole thing started to kind of go the direction it's gone, there's been a lot of inward looking, and as professionals who deal with this type of thing, I mean, I was a selectman for 18 years. Don't get me wrong. You get how this works, but the checkoff list, those things haven't been accomplished, and those are the things that we're going to need for, you guys will be cracking the whip and keeping us moving, but that's what's got to get done. So this is appreciated, and I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
It's
a joint effort here.
when Michael approached us, we hadn't spoken about it, and I said only if Rod does, and separately Rod said only if Pam does. So
Good. Thank you both a ton. Michelle, you and I talked about a couple things on Thursday, but I don't know that, one was dues,
Yeah.
your computer, but we can't vote on any money right now. But Michelle, I don't want to, I want you to have time in these meetings because you become enormously important in a very short period of time. Is there anything you'd like to update the board on that you have, that we don't have an email or something you'd like to talk about? We can't vote on any money right now, but if you want to
No.
update anybody?
Well, I sent out an email and I think to everybody that's here, in regards to what I've been doing. As you can see, I've been keeping very busy. So my right now biggest concern, which concerns me with money, my budget is only $400, or is it 400 or what is it? Direct trigger. I don't see it. Oh, office supplies, $500. And I got 100 letters for veterans that I need to mail out. And they're just on standby because I can't mail them out until I have the funds. So my job is really on hold right now.
Let me ask a structural question. Michelle, let me just interrupt you for 1 second. So my question goes to Pam and to Rod. And again, I'm so happy that Deb stayed on the line because we need to keep Mary in the loop, especially if we're probably going to meet again within the next 10 days and vote some money. Rod and Pam, my sense of this is, all the budgets I've been involved with over the years, once the budget's voted, it's somewhat difficult. You don't get to just move money around and spend money out of someplace else. But that said, the district does have, from what I can tell, a small surplus, simply because of what is in the account now, from what I could see, and the fact that the member communities have to submit their money. Let me try to get to the point. Michelle is going to need a new laptop, and I've already got one going. And if I have to pay for it out of my own pocket, I'm going to do that. And she's got some dues to some organizations she wants to join. These weren't contemplated. And when Michelle and I set up the postage account, she wasn't thinking about these type of mailings. We just looked at the old mailing budget because the prior VSO didn't do those. Do you folks, and again, my question goes to Rod and to Pam, would you folks think, in as much as we have a surplus and it's not a budgeted item, that the board would be able to vote extra money into Michelle's account for a computer, for dues, for increased mail out of our surplus into the budget? Because we certainly can't go back to the member communities. The budget's been voted on. But I would think we could move some money from the surplus into the operational budget to take care of these extra needs of Michelle's. Do I make sense to you there?
You could, but Rod and I are concerned because I guess we don't, when you say a surplus, I guess we don't know. We've seen a balance of $22,000.
Right.
That's what we've seen. Now, Michelle's salary, it's my understanding, is 25.
Right.
Okay. So we're
So when you are, I think let me anticipate your question. So if I'm in your shoes thinking, well, wait, this guy's telling me there's a surplus, there's 22,000 in the account, but we haven't paid Michelle yet. And so the way I'm looking at it is the money that's going to come in from the 3 member communities is FY22 money. And all of that is contemplated, Michelle's salary, all of that in those 3 invoices that are going to get sent.
all right. I know Wales is such a small amount, so that's why we need to see the budget.
Yeah, we need to see
Rod
the
and I
budget.
need to see the budget so we know what's coming in, added to that $22,000. To your point, Rick, or your question, yes, the district has the ability to increase that budget by utilizing surplus funds. It works differently than a town. It's not like it's free cash. It requires town meeting approval.
Town meeting approval and money in,
Right.
money out.
You are the be all and end all, the district board.
Okay.
So that's not an issue. I guess logistically now, maybe Deb can answer this because Michelle, right now you are in East Long Meadow. That's going to be your house, if you will. Deb, how do you handle postage there? Do you have a centralized postage meter in town hall that everyone uses and it gets allocated?
We do. The collector's office takes care of our mail. So any mail we just put in a bucket, and at the end of the day, they must run it through. I don't even know where the meter is, but they have one somewhere.
Okay, and do they keep track of that? Does everyone have a code and the accountant will then allocate it out by department?
Well, like I said, they actually run the mail through, so I'm pretty sure they divvy it up between departments. They must put in codes themselves.
Okay, so I apologize. I'm not, I shouldn't be asking you to do homework, but Rick, so if Michelle has mail and she's right there in East Long Meadow Town Hall, if there
with
is a
you.
way for East Long Meadow to keep track of the VSO's mail use from that postage meter, and then East Long Meadow can bill us, the district, and we will cut East Long Meadow a check for the veterans' mail.
Makes perfect sense to me. I get it.
Right.
If that's,
Yeah,
Go
because,
ahead.
and one thing we'll probably have to do based on the mailings, and this goes back to my budget question. And I just want you to know, I assume that as a board, we don't work like a town, that we could vote the surplus back into the budget to fill the holes, because we're gonna need more postage money, the laptop and all that. But I just didn't want to take it for granted without asking, Rod and Pam, you're putting in your time here, and I'm going to do everything I can not to take anything you do for granted or just say, yeah, you make a unilateral thing. Because if you don't agree, it's better to hear it. So that's why I asked the question the way I did. And it's good. So, I mean, my sense is, you will have the budget. You'll have, like I said, you'll have that today. It comes in 2 documents. One
Okay.
shows the voted budget, and the other shows the assessment by community.
okay, and when you explain to me how that is done, there's different options. You explain to me how this district does it.
Yeah, and this district does it by equalized land valuation. So once the numbers arrived at, I went to the state website and found the equalized land valuation for each member community. And I don't remember the numbers exactly, but then you take, then it's simple. You divide into 100 and allocate the budget from there. I actually still have, I did not show the calculation. It shows the percentage, but I actually have the calculation on a scrap paper if anybody wants to see it, especially from Rod and Pam's perspective, since it's new. If you want to see how I arrived at it, I'll definitely show you what I did, because I'm 99% confident I got it right.
Okay, now, Michelle, did you have a concern about postage?
Yeah, right now it's gonna get higher, and that's one of the things I want everybody to know. What I'm doing is I'm compiling from each town, not just chapter 115 benefits. And that's why I'm doing this. So if that helps, the reason why I'm doing this mass email and I'm trying to reach out to every veteran that we possibly can get our hands on, and if mail is the way to do it, that's what I'm doing right now. And that was one of the things that I was asked when I was going through my interview, was connecting. And that's how I'm connecting, because me sitting in an office is no way of me connecting to veterans. And I'm going to have the coffee with the veterans every 3 months in each town. I'm going to be doing that as well. So, but I'm going to try very hard. And that's why this is so important, because there's no way I could go door to door to each veteran and say, hey, here, chapter 115 benefits, I want to see if you can, it were federal, and that's my thing. And I hope that we can figure that out soon so I can get these out, because I have a nice pile of stuff that I want to send to them. And we got so many events coming up that I think it'll be great for them to take opportunity, free food, free stuff, supplies, organizations from everywhere are coming around to be there for these veterans. It's just a great opportunity to connect.
Now, the town, we talked, Michelle, when you were here, the town clerk did set up a veterans page on our website for you to go ahead and update. So
Yes, I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
Because if you see my desk, it's I know.
Yeah, no,
look at your desk.
No, I just, and I am going to be ordering your business cards also.
I was gonna ask you that, because I wanted to stick them in the envelopes, but that's okay.
So do you think that is a possibility then, to handle this mailing, Deb, that way?
I will,
check on that.
when I'm done with this meeting, I'll talk to our collector and see how they do their mail machine. And if that's the case, if they're willing to do that, just if they can keep veterans separate. I don't see a problem. Mary May, I don't know. She, I don't know the way she's gonna
Yeah,
think,
no,
but,
you can check with Mary, yep, yeah.
but,
I just, that would be,
doing up a little
that would
invoice
be a
and
really
sending,
great way to do it, so.
yeah, it sounds fine to me. So Michelle, I'll talk to Dawn after this
Okay.
meeting and then get back to you.
Okay, thank you. And then for the, so just to take note here, Deb, it's, MRO System Access Security Agreement. I have already spoken to, Mary about it, and I spoke to, Rick. I spoke to him as well about it. This is for access to be able to get to, DD 214s. It's a form MA ago, it says ago form 309. I need it to be authorized by somebody, but it's gonna, this one I believe is free. This one is free. I just need somebody to sign this. I don't know who can sign this to give me access, and I believe it might be you, Rick.
I can sign it.
Okay, this is the membership, which is Western Mass Veterans Service Officer Association, which is short for, for short, it's WMVSOA. The membership cost is $50 for the director fee and $30 for honorary lifetime member.
All right, and that's one of the ones, you know what I'm gonna do? I'll give you a check for that out of my pocket to pay for that. So you can join it as soon as possible. But those are the things that we're gonna have to take out of the budget, and that's where we're gonna have to look at the surplus. Before we go any further with that though, Michelle, two things. I need you to, because I'm gonna send the budget and the invoice breakdown to Pam and Rod today. I'm gonna need you to, for future, because if we're gonna talk about taking some money out of the quote unquote surplus, we're gonna need a more accurate postage number, because I think you and I just used the old postage number when we sat and worked on a rough budget. And the second thing we're gonna need is if you're gonna do more coffee hours with the veterans, let me rephrase that, not more. We've never done them. So if you're gonna start down this path, which is clearly a great idea, why don't you also at the same time put a rough cost of a budget together? You're gonna probably have to buy coffee, if you're gonna buy pastries, things to put out when you get there. We should have a number for that too, because what I'd like to see us do is when we can reconvene the board with Mary and Mike, to vote on each of the line items that's gonna go from the surplus, meaning, the laptop, the veterans coffee hours, the increased postage, that type of thing. And just one thing for Rod and Pam. So Michelle, if you can work on those two things, the increased postage cost and your, let's call it social hour, whatever you want to call it, your veterans gathering time, whatever
Right.
you want to name it, let's develop a cost for that, because we're going to have to get you money for it. And we won't just be able, we can't keep doing it kind of like now. We're better to put the
No.
money in the budget as best we can.
Well, I'm actually going to local communities. Each community is gonna donate coffee and pastries. So that's not gonna be a cost to the town.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
but if you-
networking myself out into the town, each town to help with the veterans.
Okay.
That's how I network this situation, so it doesn't cost the town anything.
Okay, but if there is a cost, just so we know, because we want to help you do this,
Yes.
we'll keep you on the right foot.
Okay,
If you can get
thank
if you can get the Village Martin Hamden or whoever to donate, if you need, let me tell you, I'm raising money for something else now in town for the Hamden Police Night Out. If you need help with that, I'll help you. Okay? Rod and Pam, one thing you will see in the budget, you mentioned it earlier, and I just want to run it back. One change we made in the budget this year is the prior VSO, there was two lines they drew from. One was mileage and one was wear and tear. And it was basically treated as a flat number. The one
Right.
thing when Michelle came on board,
Saw that.
I got
No
nothing.
comment. We're moving forward.
Moving forward, and Michelle and I already talked about this, that moving forward, it's the federal funds mileage reimbursement, and we put $5,000 in that line. And it's only when she's, not when you're commuting to work, but when you're going, common sense, and you submit a voucher. So we did make that change already.
Okay, she can submit her log and we'll reimburse her for 56 cents a mile.
Perfect.
Winner. That's it.
There we-
Michelle and I covered that one already. So we took out the old wear and tear and flat mileage number. It's as per the federal rate, and we reduced that line in the budget from 7,800, which was the two old numbers, down to 5,000.
Now, that's only for if I go to a veteran's house, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
If you're doing-
I don't force, honestly, I think 5,000 is quite high. I think that should be, some of that money should be put into office supplies, so I can just take that money and go get stamps.
We can, unfortunately, we can't authorize that money that way without a vote. But your idea makes sense. We actually picked the number only because we really had no idea how much the prior VSO was expending. So we've done it that way. It'll be by voucher system requirement going forward. And I have no problem taking it up with a full board to vote, transferring X from the mileage account into postage, but we can't do that now.
And Rick, can I just, and Michelle, so I'm gonna take off my admin, my executive secretary hat, and I'm gonna put on my town accountant hat, which is my real background for the last 30 years. I get hives when we talk about stamps.
Yeah.
Even here in Wales, we still do stamps. In my experience, it's so much better to do it the way East Longmeadow does it. You have
Agreed.
a centralized postage meter. Everything is accounted for. Not to say anybody's going to steal stamps, whatever. I'm not saying that, but for audit purposes,
Yep.
that is a lot more internal control than there is with stamps. So
Agreed. Okay, so we'll
if
see
that
what,
way works, I'd much rather do it that way.
so we'll see what, Deb, after a conversation with Mary, how that comes out.
Okay. And then to Michelle's point also about, the coffees with the veterans. I know here in Wales, we have space for Michelle that our senior center director has specified just for her. She has a desk and everything. And her coffees, I'm assuming the cost of that is going to be absorbed by our senior center.
Yeah.
They do meals, so they're just going to absorb that cost.
And I would think, to Michelle's point and also now to yours, Pam, I really think that most of the time that's what's gonna happen. If there's a way, even if it's a nominal amount, a token amount, that we don't hamstring Michelle in getting one, I agree with you. I mean, if just myself, if I walked into the Village Mart and said to Gary Mayotte, the owner, Michelle's doing something down at the town hall and she needs 5 pounds of coffee and 2 dozen donuts, he's gonna say, okay, where do I bring them? And the Bagel Nook in Hamden. So we've all got someone we can count on. I just, so Michelle sees the support. That's all. This whole thing is so new that,
Now, Michelle, you mentioned you went to a veteran's funeral. We are taking advantage of that through Chapter 115 benefits also.
Yes.
Are there certain funeral homes that the district deals with that do the veterans funerals, the $2,000?
So it's actually, if it's
Great.
chapter 115, it's 4,000
oh, it's up. It used to be
Good.
3. Okay.
for now. As long as it's not over 5. If it goes over 5, they won't pay a penny.
Okay, okay, perfect. That's great. All right.
But this time we had to go through the district, or I'm not sure if it was a district or just the town of East Longmeadow. They authorized it because the veteran was placed in the funeral home in July, and they wouldn't release the body because his son has severe brain damage and he was going to have surgery. And he was incapable to make decisions, and he was the only next of kin. So it just really got messy. Well, finally, myself and a few people from East Longmeadow, we took a ride over to the funeral home, sat there, had a meeting with the lady. It's a corporation, and they have these laws where no matter how long this body has to stay there, it has to be authorized because it's considered a high risk or a liability to take a body and go put it somewhere and lay it to rest. Because if they say, turn around and come back, hey, we didn't tell you to put it there, then you have to go take the body out, remove the body. So yeah, so we had to do an emergency burial for him. So I still have to apply for Chapter 115 to go ahead and pay the town back.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else?
No, I'm all set.
We're all set.
Thank you both very much. Michelle, are you good?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. Deb, anything, any last thoughts, any last questions?
No, thanks, Rick.
No worries. You all have a great day, and I'll get you that, Rod and Pam, I'll get you that email today with the budget and the invoice, if that's what it'll look like. It doesn't look like an invoice, but you'll get it. And then I'll be heading to Munson as soon as we exit this meeting.
All right,
Okay,
thank you,
thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
As always.